Peter, thank you.
Thanks, Shona. Can I start by thanking Shona for chairing the meeting today? I've got to get back to Wakefield. We've got Prince Charles coming to name a train. It's true. And I want to see if he'll endorse me as the mayoral candidate, because we've got a potential mayoral election in May as well. Half that story is true, by the way. I do want to thank Shona for chairing the meeting today. One of the things that I love about the LGA actually is the cross-party working that develops between the major parties. And I sometimes think if our national politicians could get on as well as we do at local level and at the LGA, it would be a better world. I've been asked to give the LGA's perspective today, and I don't need to rehearse the economic position that we are in. I think Chris Grayling said last week it's a matter of grave concern when he saw the figures, and indeed it's a matter of grave concern to local government when we look at the state of the economy. I've just been reflecting on the programme, and it's interesting. It talks about tackling unemployment, because the other side of the coin and the area where local government's involved is actually creating employment. And I'll allude to that a little bit later on. And we know that our role is changing, don't we? There's less public money for regeneration. We've now got local enterprise partnerships and new ways of promoting growth, including enterprise zones and tax increment financing. And on top of that, we've got to do the day job. Sometimes we forget, when we talk about economic regeneration and the role of local government, that we still have to do the day job, where we've had budget cuts more or less across the country of some 28 to 29%. So we live in very, very difficult times. And it was against that background that the LGA last November launched its local growth programme. And a centrepiece of the campaign is a series of town hall meetings right across the country, looking at the state of the economy and looking in particular what local government can do. The intention is to produce a green paper either in June or July. I'm not sure when our conference is, but it's either June or July. We'll present a green paper, and it will set out very clearly our record in local government in terms of economic regeneration. It'll highlight what we think we can do differently and how we can help economic growth. And crucially, it's going to highlight the powers that we think we need to be able to do that. So, in my remarks today, I'd like to touch on the campaign, but in particular give you some feedback about what people are saying up and down the country. And I think Shona will agree that the LGA has kept us pretty busy the last few weeks. We're thinking of having a T-shirt done, all these meetings we're going to. I've done one in Leeds. I've got one on Wednesday or Thursday in Wakefield. And I was at the Centre for Cities launch yesterday. Shona's got a meeting this afternoon, and it was the Economy and Transport Board meeting only last week. And the one consistent message we're getting from local government, and in particular local government leaders, is that they are fully committed to promoting local growth and creating employment. But despite that, we need to be more upfront about what we do. It was nice to hear the Minister say what he did, but there are far too many people in Whitehall who do not understand the role of local government and do not appreciate the crucial role that we play in economic development. And that has to change. And let me give you a couple of examples about how local government can get involved and how it can actually create employment in a cross-party and cross-boundary way. Staffordshire, Wolverhampton and South Staffordshire district councils have worked together across boundaries and across politics to help secure a £355 million investment in low-emissions engine plant capacity. That's created 750 skilled jobs. And it includes investing over £30 million of local council funding to create a new junction from the site to the nearest motorway. As well as investing in the site itself, the local councils work with local universities on the research and development offer to the motor industry and local colleges to ensure that they run the right courses to support high-tech manufacturing. The car industry in the UK is flourishing, with exports up 20% last year, and this new Jaguar Land Rover plant is a good example of that. In my own city of Wakefield, we opened last year the Hepworth Gallery, which was 10 years in the making, £35 million public investment. Much criticism locally, but now we've seen in the first few months 400,000 visitors, helping the economy by £8 million. One of only 2 shopping centres to open in the country last year in Wakefield, in Trinity Walk, would have collapsed, almost literally, into a hole in the ground, but for public money invested by the local authority to make sure that the construction was completed and went ahead. So councils have a proud history of helping people back into work as well. In the recession in the 1980s, we led the way helping people from the traditional industries to retrain and find employment elsewhere. And more recently, many of you will have been involved in the Future Jobs Fund in 2008-2009, where councils played a leading role in creating temporary employment programmes for young people. And whatever's said now about that particular programme, councils alone created over 40,000 placements, and all the records show that over 40% of those people who were on the programme went on to take up further and permanent employment. Of course, we can do more. I'll return to that later. And I mentioned yesterday the launch of the Cities Outlook 2012. The LGA supports the production of that document, and both local and central government need to learn the lessons from what it's telling us. The analysis shows the dramatic variation in the performance of the UK cities, and the gap between the best and the worst performing cities is widening. Each city has its own economic story, and the Outlook gives us a snapshot which shows that there isn't a simple narrative about economic performance or a straightforward north-south divide. For example, Brighton, an otherwise strongly performing city, has high levels of youth unemployment. The Cities Outlook report also shows the recession has thrown entrenched economic problems into much starker relief, in particular structural unemployment. We know too that those places with more people in lower skilled jobs have been more vulnerable to increasing unemployment since the start of the downturn in February 2008. And a consistent theme of the town hall debates is that the UK economy has a mismatch between the pool of people seeking work and the jobs that employers are seeking to fill. And we're not doing enough to equip people, especially our young people, with the right skills to compete for jobs in a global economy. This mismatch is not only bad for the individuals, but for the communities and for national productivity. I'm a great believer that education and business need to work far more closely together. Look at an area like mine, where GCSE results are actually very, very good, but we have appalling skill levels. And I pose the question, what good is it? Young people leaving education with 5, 6, 7 or 8 GCSEs in subjects that simply aren't needed by the employers who want to give jobs to them. So we need a skills system that provides local people with the skills that local employers need. We heard from the Minister that government is loosening the controls over schools through the Academy programme, deregulating the relationship with further education colleges, and introducing a radical new funding regime for universities. Whether we agree with these reforms or not, local councils have a key role to play in voluntary partnership with local educational institutions in ensuring that local people develop the capacity and the skills to thrive in a global market. For adult skills, we see opportunities to decentralise the system so that colleges are more effectively incentivised to train people for local jobs. You might ask, what would we do differently? Well, we could pay colleges more than when they equip young people with the skills that allows them to get on with the job. I know that there are people here today Excuse me, the voice is going, it's flu, by the way. Men don't get colds, as you know. It's the aftermath of the flu. There are people here from work programme contractors who recognise this form of funding. As the Minister said, payments for getting people into work. And that presents challenges. Of course, it's critical that we identify ways to maximise the success of the work programme and that local government works closely with contractors. The work programme will allow people to receive personalised support they need to get back into work. For people who are furthest from the labour market, this may involve tackling all sorts of issues: health, finance, transport, childcare, and deeper-rooted personal problems. This is why we need strong partnership working. And people in local government have been concerned about how effectively the work programme will integrate with other public services. We know that supporting people into work cannot be done by any one organisation alone. All sorts of public services and the voluntary organisations within our respective districts can play a part in helping to dismantle things that stop people getting and holding down a job. Today is a real opportunity to discuss how we might do that. In just over a year, people will begin to receive universal credit. The government tells us that the benefits system will be simpler. The process will be online and will be easy to see how much better off people are in work. There will be a 4-year transition period, so by 2017, the old benefit system will have disappeared. The support that wraps around universal credit will be critical to its success. Some people will not need support. Claiming universal credit will be a short and temporary experience. For others, the right personal support will help them tackle any issue that could reduce their chances of getting a job and sliding into longer-term unemployment. And we'll hear more about that later on today from other speakers. The economic downturn inevitably creates short-term problems. We need to be conscious of the consequences of rising unemployment so that we do not add to the problem of long-term structural unemployment. We should look closely at skills, employment support, and the new universal credit and ask, do we have an effective back-to-work system? And are we reducing the structural mismatch between the pool of people available for work and the vacancies employers have? Because places are different and local economies have different economic challenges and opportunities, we need to be able to shape our microeconomic interventions locally. To be effective, policy has to respond to local economic complexity. Some parts of government recognise this important point and have moved in this direction. For example, the creation of local enterprise partnerships is an important milestone, as well as city deals. But the question is, have we moved far enough to allow the effective targeting of microeconomic policy? Let me give you one example of the different approaches in government. In its local growth paper published in 2010, the government recognised the importance of functional economic areas. Indeed, it argued that local enterprise partnerships should follow this geography. But the Department of Works and Pensions organises itself on 3 geographies: one for the work programme, one for Job Centre Plus, and one for the European Social Fund. Guess how many of those correspond to functional geography? Not one. Not one. So we need a much more consistent approach to making local decision making responsible for ensuring that microeconomic policy is fit for purpose locally. And finally, just to say this, that this is going to require a strong partnership between both local and national government and the providers of public services to do it more effectively. And I can give you this pledge finally, that as always, local government stands ready to play its part in doing so. Thank you.